thank you very much for being here this evening, for taking the time out of your evening to come learn a little bit about Block Captain and how you can be a Block Captain here in our community. My name is Trevor Sperry. I'm the emergency manager here in Spanish Fork. And this is our first Block Captain training that I've held here. I've been here about 4 years. And based on this turnout, I hope to do this at least annually. It's really impressive to see a great turnout, and it shows just how much you care about yourselves, your families, and your community. And that's what Block Captain is caring about your community and your neighbors. And I'd like to introduce Emily.
My name is Emily Shaw. My husband, Stephen. We are actually the emergency preparedness coordinators of the Palmyra Stake area. And we had a crazy idea to try to get Block Captains trained. I took it to Trevor, and this is what it became. So, woo! Yes, so this will be fun. We're excited.
So she approached me, wanted to hold this for her stake. And I'm like, well, actually, I've been wanting to do this citywide. Do you mind if I jump on board? And it's been wonderful to collaborate together. And hopefully, you can take away something from tonight's training.
All right, so we're going to show you a little video clip, and hopefully you'll be able to hear it okay. This is actually from the Great Shakeout website. We kind of want to just give you guys an idea of what they're projecting may happen if we get a large earthquake happening here. It's not meant to scare anybody. It's meant to get you thinking, meant to have everybody consider the things that we may go through if we have a large earthquake. Other things, other natural disasters that could occur here could have the same kind of things happening afterwards, things that we'll be needing to look into. So think about the things that you do daily. What do you use? You use water, you use sewer, you eat, you drink water, you do all these things and have transportation. And so if something were to happen, what kind of thing would be affected?
It's a cold winter day in Utah. Along the Wasatch Front, hundreds of thousands of people are busy at work. Many of them are commuting to jobs in different counties, far from where they live. 80% of the state's 2.7 million people live and work in the region. Today, these families and many others across the region will be separated. The largest earthquake to hit Utah in modern times has just begun. The rupture travels approximately 25 miles north along the Wasatch Fault. Some react appropriately, others don't. Over 10,000 buildings collapse. The shaking lasts for nearly a minute in some areas, damaging 285,000 buildings. Even in buildings that are not damaged, possessions fall down or are thrown across rooms. Infrastructure is destroyed. Utilities throughout Utah are disrupted. 2,300 people will die. 30,000 people will be injured. And $35 billion in building damages will occur. Finally, the shaking is over. A large number of people are trapped in collapsed buildings. Over 160 fires start, some turning into conflagrations. Hundreds of thousands of people are trying to use their phones, causing the system to become overloaded. In the months ahead, there will be tens of thousands of aftershocks. Residents will struggle to recover from the earthquake. There will be no water for weeks or months and no electricity. Traveling around town will be more difficult and time-consuming, and 350,000 people will be displaced from their homes. We are all in this together. We will all suffer the earthquake's consequences if most of us do nothing now. How quickly you will recover from this disaster is up to you and those around you. Your level of personal preparedness will determine your quality of life after the quake. Here are a few things you can do to prepare. It's a good idea to have a fire extinguisher, a first aid kit, and at least a 3-day supply of water for each person in your household. Have an emergency plan and decide where you will meet up with your family after an earthquake. Make sure there is a person out of town you can contact to let your loved ones know that you're okay. When remodeling your older brick home, consult a professional engineer or the Utah Guide for the Seismic Improvement of Unreinforced Masonry Dwellings. Consider whether earthquake insurance makes sense for you as part of your financial plan. You should also secure furniture, your hot water heater, and heavy or valuable items so they won't fall. Preparedness is not only for the home, but also for business. Be sure that your company has emergency plans for a major earthquake. Empower yourself and your family. Be prepared.
So they're expecting the large one to be about a 7.2. You all remember the Magna quake in 2020? That was 5 point something. So significantly larger than what we can expect.
All right, so you might be asking yourself, if you have agreed to be a block captain or are considering it, what have I gotten myself into? One of the first things that we want you guys to do is figure out who your neighbors are. Do you guys know who your neighbor is on both sides? Yes. How about 2 houses down? End of the road? Across the street? Yes. Do you know if anybody's on oxygen or if they are in wheelchair bound or anything like that? Anybody out there not know who those people are on your block? So the biggest thing that we want you guys to do is figure out who your neighbors are. Get to know each other. Hopefully it's more than just for this, but to also be good neighbors, right? You may be asked to distribute information. For instance, we do have the Utah Great Shakeout coming up. I know in a lot of areas we're going to be the areas will be distributing information about what their area is going to be doing. We'll touch on that in a minute. But so you might be asked to help distribute things, because instead of having 4 or 5 people distribute to the entire city, it's easier to ask a couple dozen people distributing it to 10 different households. Also, you and your neighborhood, it would be awesome if we could have everybody actually participate in the Great Shakeout every year for practice. When we do the drill, and if there is an emergency, we're going to need block captains to document what's going on so that we can get the information up to the city through the communication plan. Because of this, if you think about what the city is going to be going through, especially the personnel, they're not going to have a clue what's out there until we help.
So going along with that, you guys really are our eyes out in the community. We have limited staff. Here's kind of a broken down grid of what our first responder numbers look like here in the city. Our numbers are growing. With population growth comes growth in our first response population. So currently we sit around 45,000 residents and growing. Number of firefighters employed, we have around 40 plus or minus. The majority of those are volunteer. And so their response time may be hit and miss, right? They may not be able to leave work during certain hours. Some workplaces are more lenient, right? And so our response times could suffer a little bit because of that. We have hired a full-time fire chief, deputy chief, fire marshal, a number of lieutenants. And so these our full-time staff are growing. And so we're able to staff both fire stations. And yet we still struggle to fulfill the standard. About 40 police officers, and again, about 8 are on patrol during each shift. And so the ratio of total responders to citizens are all responders to 375 residents. Or for those that are on duty, 1 first responder to over 2,500 residents. And so you can see our resources are limited, and so we truly do rely on our residents to help make a difference in the time of disaster.
Okay, so as we're talking about the importance of the communication plan, meaning from block captains up to city, this is just an example of what our city is organized as. I want to point out this is not a religious thing whatsoever, okay? But we do use the local religion. They already have the area organized by what they call stakes. We as a city use that to talk about what areas everything is in. So I live in the Palmyra stake area, And so that actually consists of all of this pink right here. Go ahead and click one more for me, babe. This is what the areas are in Spanish Fork. So if you are not part of the main religion around here, just so you understand, this is how we are organized. It was already organized before us, so it makes it a little easier for us just to follow the same boundaries.
We want to make it very clear that this is a neighborhood program, a community program, and not a church program. But like Emily said, we just utilize the boundaries of the local stakes for this purpose.
Yes.
So I wanted to put a plug in for the Everbridge program and Pulse Point. Who's familiar with either one of those? Who has Pulse Point on their phone? So this is a public app you can download on your phone, and you can get real-time emergencies in the city, accidents, fires. It doesn't go into all the detail that first responders receive, but it gives you a little bit of insight into what's going on within the city as far as emergencies. It's not necessarily police related, it's more fire and ambulance. Also, if you're CPR certified, this will alert you if CPR is needed within a quarter mile of your location. And so you may be the first response before the ambulance arrives, and you can administer CPR to whoever needs it. So that's a great public app. Everbridge, there's a link there that we'll send out, but if you search Spanish Fork City Alerts on Google, it'll bring you to the main page for Everbridge. And there you can register yourself, your family members, to receive alerts during emergencies. And then also you can register specific skills in your household, all right? So you're fluent in another language. You're EMT or medically trained. You've been CERT trained. You can operate heavy equipment, right? Things like that could be an asset to the community. And I have the opportunity to look up that list, and I can reach out if that resource was needed. On the flip side, you can register any specific needs in your household. All right, so you require power at home for oxygen or refrigerated medicine. Right, there's a secondary language. There's mobility impairments, other things like that, so that we can know, okay, who needs help quicker than most, all right? So I invite you to search Everbridge and to download Pulse Point if you'd be interested. So great resources in the community.
We're going to start going through kind of the things that we're hoping to see before, during, and after a disaster, and just kind of let you guys know what we assume is going to happen. First and foremost, like we mentioned before, meet your neighbors. Give them information about Everbridge, things like that. A lot of people are more and more concerned about this, but if there is something where they have refrigeration needs for their medication, or energy for or electricity for their oxygen, or things like that, that is also information that can get quickly passed up from the ground up versus also coming down from the city. Same thing with skills, same things with, and including things like whether or not maybe they're an electrician, maybe they have power tools, things like that may come in need during an emergency. So if you get to know your neighbors and they trust you well enough, they may be willing to share this kind of information with you.
Ideally, a block captain has 5 to 10 homes, right? I wouldn't suggest any more than 10 because that can get overwhelming. Lots of groups, lots of neighborhoods, they can have like a summer get-to-know-you party, right? Potluck barbecue, get to know your neighbors, even outside of your block, right? Just invite everyone. So get to know your households. So your number one responsibility is your own family, right? Yourself, your family, make sure they're taken care of. Next, you need to assess your household's needs and statuses, okay? Encourage neighbors to meet at the command post. So a command post is just a general meeting area, all right? If you have a park near you, open field, a fire hydrant, wherever you can gather to help understand the needs, what's going on, is everyone accounted for? Those that aren't here, do we know where they are? Have you been able to communicate with them? All right. Report the needs to the neighborhood command post captain. So your captain could be anyone that you assign as captain of your neighborhood, whether it be your Elders Quorum president, Relief Society president in your ward, or just anyone who volunteers. All right. And then you want to create an inventory of available skills and assets. Okay, who has a generator? Who has food storage? Who has water? Who has bandages?
So when you were asking, how does the information get up or get to the city if we don't have communication through cell phones and things like this? One of the important things is you're going to want to find a runner that can go from the neighborhood to the area command post. That could be a set of teenage boys if mom and dad are okay to let them go. Anybody who's physically able to get from point A to point B. They are going to be the ones sharing the information if ham radios or handheld radios or communication through cell phones are not available.
Establish your neighborhood and then establish your area, right? Whether that be 4 blocks, 6 blocks, whatever's feasible within a reasonable amount of distance that the runner can get to, right? And within that area, you're going to establish a command post within that area. And the same goes for a captain, all right? The area captain. So the neighborhood's going to gather the needs and resources, and they're going to share that information with the area, who then gathers all the same information and then communicates with the city EOC. So the EOC stands for Emergency Operations Center. So that's where I would be, along with all the leadership in the city, all the directors, IT, GIS mapping. So as we get reports from our radio room, those reports are then ran into the EOC, and there we can prioritize our resources.
One of the things that we're trying to get set up is to help all the neighbors know who's your block captain, where are you supposed to meet if there's a problem. We created this form. It's one that you can print and cut down the middle. For every block captain, fill out their information to hand to all the neighbors. If you don't know who your block captain is, you're not going to know who to contact or who to talk to. As a block captain, we're hoping you'll have all of these things kind of on hand, little drawstring backpack or something that if there's something that happens, you can grab it and go. Include a pencil, include the forms, whatever it is that you need. So we have a couple of forms that go to the block captains. We also have a couple of forms that go to the neighborhood and then area commands so that the reporting hopefully is nice and smooth and we're not forgetting any information. The hope is that every block captain fill in the information on the top. What neighborhood are you in? What is your name? And then fill in all the homes that you look over. Fill in how many people are in that home so that if something were to happen, you're not trying to remember, did they have 4 kids or 3? I can't remember. Do it early. Make it easy on yourself. It also helps because if somebody else is filling in because they don't have, you're not around, it's nice to have this information already available. All right, the next one is the emergency report. So it has a spot for injuries, fires, gas leaks, and other. So again, if you can have this ready to go, it would just make life so much easier. So you can go and you can write down what are the injuries. So then that way, anybody with medical skills can help. One of the big things that I always worry about is, what if the block captain is not there? What if they have a co-captain that lives in another house in your block? What if they're not there? It is not a bad idea to have everybody in your block aware of the process. They probably want to know anyway, just so that they can understand the communication plan. But also to have they can even have their own forms if they want to. If the block captain or co-captain are not available, someone will hopefully step up and get this part organized. If people are off to work and the captain works in another city, he or she, they're not getting home fast enough to organize this. So somebody will need to take care of it. So everyone a block captain, help train all your neighbors. Hopefully they won't be stressed out about it, but it's just to make sure that people are aware of the process and what needs to be done.
A lot of us are familiar with these 3 colors. Green typically means good, right? Yellow, need help but not critical, and red, need immediate help. So either print these or get some pieces of paper, deliver them to your homes, right, in your block, and stash them, like you said, in a drawstring backpack, in a closet near the door, right, where you can tuck it into the window. And in a disaster, when a block captain's going through their street, they can see, okay, those are good, those are good. Okay, it looks like there's help needed here. All right? So just really quick, accessible information for the block captains. So anyone know the date for the Great Shakeout this year? April 18th. Good job. So the Great Shakeout is a nationwide exercise. We hope that in your workplace, your school, your neighborhood, that you would participate. And we open up our EOC at the city, and we welcome any ham radio calls with check-ins on your numbers. So block captains, they gather their mock numbers, right? People practice putting their colors in the window. They tally up what they got, and they report them to their neighborhood, to their area, and then to the city.
This is also a really good time with it to encourage your neighbors and your own household to make sure everybody understands and practices how to cover when there's an earthquake. I used to work at UVU, and when we did this activity, we first went to Chick-fil-A, grabbed a shake, and then when it happened, we'd all sit under our desks eating our chocolate shakes. So make it fun, or for your families and your households, as long as they're understanding what needs to be done if an earthquake actually started.
So has anyone heard of VOAD? Voluntary Organizations Active in Disaster. What are some organizations that might respond in a disaster? So the Red Cross, their main deal is mass care, sheltering, feeding, right? The Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints is a big one. Salvation Army. Tabitha's Way here in town, they've joined. So these are all voluntary groups. They come they're not going to send us a bill. They're here nonprofit to help serve our community. So their main deals are cooperation, communication, coordination, and collaboration to alleviate the suffering during a disaster, during and after. Because how long is recovery after disaster? Hurricane Katrina, they're still recovering, right? And so these organizations are out there that I can request to come help our citizens in a time of need. Our tier 1 or our priority locations are our schools, because they have showers, kitchens, bathrooms, right? Churches are a little more limited when those things come. But they could be like a evacuation center or an information center, a warming center, right? Go ahead.
I was going to say, and one of the great things is if we have the communication plan in place, when those buildings are cleared for our use, if we are all misplaced, that information is going to come from the top down. So our communication plan not only goes from blocks to city, it goes city to blocks. Yep. So whether or not it's through a runner who has the information, or if we're using the ham radios and things like that, once they have that established, they'll be able to get the information to the citizens.
So here in this picture is what's called a Family Assistance Center, an FAC, and there we can establish, organizations can come and help get people back on their feet, right? The Red Cross can provide a hotel, prepaid cards to fulfill necessities until people can get back on their feet, temporary housing, driver's license, right? All sorts of things that can be set up to help our citizens recover from a disaster. So who's been through CERT training? Awesome, quite a few of you. Some of you have been through my most recent class. We hold this class twice a year. It's the Community Emergency Response Team. I always tell people I hope that block captains are CERT trained and CERT members are block captains, because it provides a lot of that critical training like utility shutoff. Mm-hmm. We talk about disaster preparedness in the home and in your neighborhood. We talk about the CERT organization. The CERT do not self-deploy. They are requested by the city to deploy to certain locations based on need. You could certainly deploy to your own neighborhood, right, and offer assistance. That's what we're trying to get here is, as block captains and as community members, we hope that you would help your own household and your neighbors, right? We learned about medical, how to help save against the 3 killers, airway, bleeding, and shock, all right? We talk about triage, so colored tarps, right? Much like the colored paper in your windows, green tarp, these people are walking wounded, right? They're okay, and they can often help other people. Yellow, they need help, but it's not critical. and red are critical, right? They need immediate assistance to help save their life. We talk about minor search and rescue. There are certain circumstances where you would not go into a building as a CERT member, just don't have the proper equipment, the training, because we don't want to put your life at jeopardy, right? That's number one, is your life. We talk about fire suppression. We light up a fire out here in the gravel pit, and we put out large fires. It's a lot of fun. Disaster psychology. Oftentimes in a disaster, people are all over the place mentally, right? They've lost a loved one. They don't know where a loved one is. They've lost a pet. They've lost their home. They don't know what to do next. And that's one thing that you can offer as a CERT member, and even as a community member. Just sit with them, be their friend, listen. And then we talk about terrorism. Obviously, as a CERT member, we would probably not respond to many terrorist events, but we do address it. In today's age, we have to address it, unfortunately. So it's a great program. Hope that you would come out to our next class in October.
And I know that they will have more fairs and other trainings and things. I know you've mentioned having CPR training available. Trying to think of what other things that I've seen recently.
Yeah, we have our annual fair typically in September. That's the preparedness month. Yeah, just look for all sorts of things coming out from the city, different events.
They actually have a specific Facebook page for emergency management. So if you aren't following that, I would suggest following that. Because I think this topic scares a lot of people. If we find little ways to train and just, again, everybody a block captain. So if you have a block set up, even if you don't have a captain over it yet, pull them together, explain what happens and what a block captain is needed for. Say again?
Knowledge eases fear.
Yeah, exactly. Knowledge can ease fear. And so I think that's probably going to be the only answer I know how to give you is we just need to inform. And hopefully they'll realize that this is not as scary as they think it's going to be.
As a community, Utah County, right, even nationwide, people want to help people. And I think in the time of need, people would step up, even if they've never heard of block captain, all right? So this is just kind of a formal training, but honestly, I do believe that our community would step up, they would check on their neighbors, and they would help report needs so that everyone's taken care of. Well, thanks everybody.
Thanks for coming, guys. Appreciate
Appreciate it.